Hey guys, so I'm Iresh Sharma. I'm a student at NI. I'm a second year CA student, and I'm also the web dev lead at DSC. So today we have gathered here to take a workshop on Flask. Before we start, I'd like you guys to check on your Python version. So just do Python hyphen hyphen version or Python 3 hyphen hyphen version. Any version above 3.6 is recommended. The latter part of this video is actually the recording of the live session. Since we had some technical issue, we are recording the starting part of the sessions again. So, building the web with Flask. Flask is a web server, what do we call service, or a web server writing framework that is that is there for Python. So let's just start. Okay, the agenda. So the agenda for today for this event would be, firstly we would be learning basic templating with Jinja, and then we would learn how to write APIs. So we'll be writing a basic user management API using Flask and MongoDB. So what is Flask? Well, Flask is a Python web development framework.
There are two things: frameworks and libraries. So the major difference between both of them is that framework is a huge set of code, and your app sits inside that code. So your app is basically wrapped by a framework. But when you're using libraries, what you do is you take a small snippet from that library and you use that in your app. So as you can see in these diagrams, I've tried to explain the best in my means. But yeah, so Flask is a framework. We use Flask to make web applications, and it's a framework, so all our code is wrapped inside Flask. And what that means is the way we write Python is slightly different because we have decorators and stuff that Flask provides us, and we're going to use that. So the syntax is not a lot, but like a few lines here and there, the syntax is different. Okay, so let's go ahead and install Flask. For that, open up your terminals and go ahead and type pip install Flask. So you can either on Mac or on Windows or Linux, you can do pip install Flask or pip3 install Flask. Else, yeah. Else, if you're on Mac, you can do Python 3 -m pip install Flask. Also, guys, she said font, is the font okay now, or should I increase a little more? Okay, this should be big enough, I guess. So again, if you're on Windows or Linux, you can do pip install Flask or pip3 install Flask. This is going to take very less time for me because I already have Flask installed, but it might take some time for you. Once you have done, okay, Raghav said you're done, so cool. So, okay, let me just minimize this. Let's go ahead and write some code, okay? So our first part, as I said, we'll be talking about templating. So let's go ahead and make a Python file, app.py, and we're going to import Flask. But the way we're going to import is we're not going to import the whole library. We're going to take the library Flask, and from that, we're going to import the object Flask for now. So this way, you have the Flask object with you in this file. What you have to do next is you have to make an object of the Flask class. Okay, so app is equal to Flask name. So now the variable app is basically your Flask app. Okay, so the simplest way to understand this is that the variable app stores your Flask application, and whatever you want to do with your application, you're going to do it using the app variable. Okay, then so what we're going to do is in the final thing, we're going to do app.run, and because we are building, we're going to put it in debug is equal to true. So this is going to run our app. Okay, right now, if I run this, it wouldn't really do much. So say no model for Flask found. That is weird. Let me just do it again. Yeah. So if I go to this link, nothing will happen. I'll probably get an error. So yeah, one sec. I'll get an error not found. Because in any web application, you have routes. So like when we use GitHub, we go to github.com/the username, right? So in my case, it'll be Iresh Sharma. So that'll take me to the username. So after the domain, what we have this part, so the /Iresh Sharma is the route. That is where the web application will take you. So we have to go ahead and define that. So when I clicked on this link, it took me to the slash route. The problem is the slash route does not exist. I haven't defined that slash route yet. So the app does not know where to go. What we're going to do now is we're going to define that. We'll use at app.route slash. And what I'm going to do is write a simple function that'll just return us a string. So I'm going to return hello world, the classic. Save it, and now let's go back to that link. So now if I go to this link, you can see we have hello world here. So we did not get a 404 or not found error because now we have defined the home route, right? So did I even understand until here? Anyone can please respond. Okay, cool. So, but this is very vague. You cannot keep sending all the text here. So even if I change this to hello world, hi, what are you doing? It doesn't really make a lot of sense because you can't just send text. It's not a web application. It doesn't look good. So how do we make a web application? We add HTML and CSS to it. So everyone knows to make a to make a website, you need HTML and CSS, and hence we're gonna add that. So this HTML part in what do we call in Flask is known as templates. So we're gonna make a folder called templates. Okay, and inside that we're gonna first define something called base.html. Okay. Um, okay, so in base.html, we're going to define the basic HTML file. So this is what a HTML file looks like. It's an HTML5 file. We know that it's an HTML file because it has doc type HTML. So the problem now is you can obviously use this, but we don't want this. We want some way to manipulate this HTML using our Flask application, right? So we're going to convert this into a Jinja template. The way we do that is very basic. We go ahead and add Jinja variables into it. So for the title block, I'm going to add percentage, and I'm going to name this block title. You'll understand what this means in a little while. Just hang in there. I'll tell you what this means in like a few seconds. And we're going to do the same thing for all the parts. So for title, we have one block. For head, we're going to have another block. And for body, we're going to have another block. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to extend this. So this is our base HTML. This is something that we want every time, right? So every HTML page that you load, that has to have the document HTML, that has to have the head, and that has to have the body and stuff. So instead of writing that again and again, what we do is we make a base file. So basically we make a thing which will have everything that we need again and again. Okay. So this is made. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to make another HTML file. This is going to be home.html. Okay. And I extend this. So I do extend base.html. And now I'm not going to change much. I'm just going to add a title here. So remember we added a block title. Similar way, we do a block title here. We add stuff inside here. We change the title. And then finally, I'm going to end this block. Okay. Now, if I go and open this page, it should show a difference. But no, it won't, because we make the HTML, we made the templates, but we didn't say the application to render this template or show this template when we go to the route, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to add that now. We'll have from Flask, we're going to import a function called render template. Okay. And over here, we're going to quickly go ahead and add render template and the template name that we want to render. So we want to render the home.html file. So now if I reload this page, it gave me an error. So extend. Okay, it was a typo. I need to go ahead and do it. Extends. Okay, let's reload. Yeah, so you can see everything became empty and we can't see any changes. That is because I rendered this home.html file. I just made change to the title. I didn't add anything here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a block body. We're going to add an h1 tag saying, hey, the template is working. And I'm going to end this tag. So ending and opening is similar to any other programming language. You cannot do a lot of programming here. It's a template language, not a programming language. But like any other programming language, you have to tell it that where to open or start and where to end or close, right? So end block, we'll save this. I'll go ahead and reload this page. Now you can see, hey, the template is working. Cool. So this is basic templating, how to make templates work. Let's go over it again once very quickly. So what's happening is when I go to this route/route, it goes into this function. Okay, so this and this is connected. That's how Flask works. So now it goes into this function. In this function, we just render the template called home.html. If I go to home.html, it is extending base.html. If I go to base.html, this is a basic HTML file with some variables in it. Variables like title block, head block, and body block. Okay, so I extend this. I use that title block to add some title. I use that body block to add some body. Okay, this is what we've discussed, Abhita. Now, so did you guys? Okay, I'll go a little slow. I'm really sorry. Can you tell me which part did you not get? I'll start from there again. Manu. Okay. So did everyone understand this part? Can everyone? Was anyone following along with me? Um, okay. Yes. So were you able to get this working? Were you able to get this? Hey, template is working. Okay. No replies. I'm just gonna. Okay. Cool. Yes. So see, now the problem again rises is that if I want to change this one sentence according to some logic, I'll have to keep doing that again and again. That is what it looks like. Can you explain the app.py part again? Okay. Okay, I'm going to explain this whole file line by line once again. Okay. So the first line is importing from the Flask, what do we call, package that we installed. We are importing the Flask object, okay, to make our application or make our file into a Flask file, into a Flask-based project, okay. Then again from the Flask package, we're importing something called render template. This we use later to render our HTML files on the screen, okay. Now app is equal to Flask __ name is some syntax to make the app to put the Flask object into the app variable. What does that mean? Basically, as I said, Flask is a framework. It wraps around your application. So what we do is we take a variable application, we wrap Flask around it. Okay, so now everything we do is with the application. So now we have we have app which is keeping the framework, and inside that we could keep doing the stuff. Okay. So initially when we had this commented out, so I'm going to do that again. I comment this out and I reload this page. I'll get a not found. That is a 404 error, which is happening because when I go to this link has the IP, the port, and then a slash. So the slash route, we need to define it. We need to tell that if someone pings me at my slash route, what should it do? So for that, we do this. We do app.route/. So that is the way of defining different routes. Okay. And okay, what I'll do is I'll show another example. I'll do app. route to slash hello, and in this I'm just going to return a string called hello there. Okay, it's okay, sorry, so server is up. Let's go here. Now if I go to slash hello, you can see hello there shows up. So basically we're trying to define the route so that if someone goes to this place, this is supposed to happen. Okay, so did you understand this part, Amok, or do you want me to explain a little more? Okay, cool. Did you understand the templating part as well? Sure. So now let's start adding some logic to it. Okay. Logic as in, like I was saying, so right now you can just add text, but it will be very tedious that, so, okay, in an application, so let's say the Facebook profile page looks similar, like it's same for everyone, except it has the person's name. So if I open the Facebook ka homepage, Facebook ka profile page, it'll show Iresh Sharma. But if Pratyusha opens it, it'll show Pratyusha R. So the way that I have the things that we have covered right now, the only way you can do it is by having multiple pages for everyone, which is technically useless. Like it doesn't make sense to have. So if you have thousands of users, you'll have to make thousands of HTML files, which is useless. There's no point of doing that. But luckily, we don't have to do that. What we can do is we can pass a variable. I'm guessing everyone here knows what variables are because you have learned C and Sujan covered it in yesterday's event. So we define something called variable. So I'm going to take a variable called name. Okay. And I'm going to write it inside curly brackets. So these curly brackets are the Jinja template itself. If you see, everything which is related to Jinja and not HTML is in curly brackets. So double curly brackets ke under will keep the variable name, and in app.py I am going to do a comma, name is equal to Iresh. Okay, I'm just going to add a quick BR tag here, and let's make these H3 so they're smaller, and let's make this an H1 so this is big. Okay, now if I go here and I go back to the slash route, you can see it shows Iresh and then hey there, hey the template is working. So this is how you send variables. Now there is in theory no limit in the number of variables that you can send. Okay, so now you know how to render, how to personalize an HTML file, right? So if you're making a social, if you're making the second like a new Facebook, you want my name, you can just send it as a variable. But what if you want something else? So let's say second. Yeah. So let's say you want to show a single button given what my age is. So if my age is more than 18, it should show that button. If my age is less than 18, it should not show that button. The way we do that is obviously we'll use conditionals. Everyone here, I'm guessing, knows conditionals. But we're going to do that conditionals in the template file. Okay. So I'm going to show you the syntax for that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send a variable called age because we need a way to send the data. So age sends the data. I'll go in here and I'll have a if statement. If age is greater than or equal to 18, then say, let's use a H2 tag. Wow, you can vote, and have a button which says vote. And we're going to have an else statement. Else to, sorry, you cannot vote. And again, like I'm saying from the starting, when you open something, you have to close it. So we opened or started if, and hence now we have to end the if. So the way we do that is end if. Okay, now if I save this, if you remember, I sent the age 18 here. Okay, if I reload the page, I should have wow, you can vote and the vote button. Okay, now if I send the age, let's say 16 over here, I reload the page, it'll say sorry, you cannot vote. This is very basic templating, if else statements. Did everyone get this part as well? Does anyone want me to repeat? She never ended the else. Okay. So if else is how do I say this? Okay. If else is like a pair thing. Okay. You have to end the if. Okay. Wait. Let me think of a better way. Okay. So if an else are conjugate to each other, I need to close the if because there can be an else. But if I mention an else here, we are pretty sure there's not going to be any other thing under this. So we don't need to close the else. Okay, now this makes sense. Since if can be followed by more computational statements, we need to end that. But since else does not have any other, it itself is a closing tag, we cannot do that. Cool. Okay, did everyone get this part? So let's move on to some more complex stuff like looping. So you can also loop using Jinja, which is very interesting and which helps a lot. So I'm going to quickly send a list here. So let's send list is equal to 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4 comma 5 and 6. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is in home, since all of you know in Python we have loops like for I in list. Since we can do that, Jinja actually is very similar to Python syntax, and hence we can do something similar here. So I'll just go here and I'll write percentage for I in list. We're going to have a h3 tag which says I, which will have the variable I. Again, since I is a variable, I need to wrap it inside curly braces. If I don't do that, if I have a h4 here with just I, that won't work, but we'll test that. And then again, since for is not a self-closing thing, you have to close it, and hence we're going to do a and for. Okay, let's save this and let's go ahead and reload this page. Okay, for I in list, my spelling was correct. Okay, my spelling was incorrect. I'm sending list. Okay, let's make this list because list is a keyword. So yeah, save and let's reload. Okay, as you can see, we have everything here. But as I said, okay, I'll just zoom in a little. As I said, you need to use the variable I. If you just put in I, it'll print I. Now the best part is it's still looped. So even if like let's say I don't want to show the what do we call show the content of the list, but I just want to print a simple word. So let's say I want to print hello as many times as there are variables, as there are elements in lists. Okay, so now if I reload, it'll just print hello 5 times. Was this clear? Everyone got this part? Okay, so that is basically it about what do we call really sorry about templating. You can go to our GitHub repository and you'll get a better version of it. So it's very similar, but it has a little more styling, and I spent some time over how to use CS and stuff. So you can look that over, and if you have any troubles, you can go ahead and ping me or ping anyone and we'll help you with that. Was this clear? Should I move on? Also, if anyone has any questions up till now, you can ask me right now. Okay, I am gonna expect that everyone understood and I'm gonna move on. So, okay, now let's talk about API. We have heard about this fancy term a lot. API is application programming interface. Those are big buzzwords that, to be honest, doesn't make a lot of sense to someone who doesn't know what API is. So an API is basically some software or some program which is running on a server to which you can make calls. So let's talk about the Giphy API. Everyone knows about Giphy, the amazing website that we use for these GIFs. Okay. So Giphy API, what you can do is you can make them a call and then they'll return you a GIF. But there is a lot more complication to that. So you can send them what kind of gift do you want, how many gifts do you want, and that kind of stuff. This is something we call as customer facing API, but there are backend APIs. So those APIs are very specific for a single software, and those APIs are, without those APIs, frontends will break. So there's no point in so if that API doesn't exist, the frontend won't work and the application will break. So what we're gonna do today is gonna make an API. Let's talk about RESTful APIs. We have a couple of different type of APIs. We had initially we had SOAP APIs where we used to send XML files. But the recent, not recent, but the current industry norm is RESTful APIs. And the way RESTful APIs work is they send JSONs to each other. Okay. To everyone who's thinking what a JSON is basically a fancy dictionary. So since all of you know Python, I'm pretty sure what you know a dictionary is. And JSON is just basically a fancy name for dictionary with a few extra features here and there. Okay. So when we talk about APIs, we talk about HTTP. So HTTP is Hypertext Transport Protocol, and that is what we use for sending requests, and that is what APIs use. Okay, so even in the code that we wrote, we were making a call to HTTP. So if I move that and I do HTTP colon /127, yeah, if I do this, I'll get the same result because we're using HTTP. Now, HTTP has a lot of things inside it. It is a huge, literally a very, very huge thing. But there are two major parts to it. One thing called methods, which is basically rules that define how your API should be written or how HTTP calls and HTTP transfer should be done. And there's something called status codes. So status codes is basically a specific number that signifies something. So if your application works correctly, you'll send a status code of 200. So let's talk about methods in detail. I'll just open this link. It's an MDN link. So there are a lot of methods that HTTP give us, which are get, head, post, put, delete, connect, option, trace, and patch. But the most important, the most commonly used methods are get, post, put, delete, and patch. Okay, so the this might sound a little bogus right now. You might not get it very well right now. But once we start writing the application, once we actually start using the get and post and put calls, it'll get much more clear. For now, just bear with me for some while. So we send a get request if we want some information. So we send a get request to get some information, which is pretty self-explanatory. We send a post. Okay, something interesting about get request is in a get request you cannot send data. You can so basically a get request is supposed to get you data, and you don't have to send data for that. You might have to send some variables, but for that we use queries. That is also something interesting. I'll talk about that. But you can't explicitly send a huge list of huge amount of data with a get request. You can get a huge amount of data with a get request. Now post request is made to post something. So basically, if I want to give you some information, in the medieval days, I would have written a post to you. So from that analogy, post request is basically a request where we send a lot of data, and it is mostly used for creating things. So let's say you are writing a user management system where you want to create a new user. You'll send a post request with all of the users data. So a post request can have data and you can send data with it. So you will send a post request with data and the server will create the user. Okay. Next really interesting thing is delete request. So a delete request is used to basically delete something. So you can send query parameters with a delete request and then the server will delete. So again, when I'm talking about the server, I'm basically talking about what we are going to write now. So okay, for password authentication, which method do we use? For password authentication, so for password authentication, if I'm not wrong, you can use any method if you want. Okay, so you just need to send some data, but you have to make sure that the data is encrypted and the data should not be seen. So it's mostly a post call, but you can do it with any call. Okay, so delete is to delete something. That is pretty self-explanatory. There's another request called patch. So what does patch mean in real life? Patch in real life is fixing some things or changing a little thing, changing some like a little piece of a huge piece. Okay, so we send patch requests to make partial modifications to our data. These are the four methods that I'll be covering today. But then apart from that, we have connect, option, trace, and put. Out of these, put is used sometimes, but put is like sometimes used, and put is mostly used for sending files with your data. But mostly these four are used. Okay. So status code, then we're just going to open a link, and this link has a list of all the status codes. Status codes, as I said, is just a number. You can say these 5 lines, what all these status codes do. Okay. So if you have, if you need, so if there's information responses, you use 100 to 199. Doesn't really matter. I mean, you won't see these kind of status codes anytime soon. For success, we send 200. So the specific number 200 is used when, so let's say I sent a GET request to my server. It will send me a status code 200 if it is able to get that data and send it to you. So if the whole transaction is complete, it sends me a 200 request. Okay. 300 is redirects, not very important. 400 is client errors. So what can be a client error? Let's say you send me a GET request to get a user ka data. Okay, but then for to getting a user data, I tell you that you have to send me the user ID, and you don't end up doing that. That means you sent a bad request. So that is a client side error, and bad request is actually 400. So status code 400, that exact number, means a bad request. And the 500 series stands for server errors. So if I as a server mess up, I'll send you 500. So let's say again you were sending me you sent me the correct ID, you send me a correct request to get the user data, but now I as a server broke, I did something wrong, or I was not able to compute the user data. In that case, I'll send you a 500 error, which is a internal server error. 500, the exact number, stands for internal server error. Okay, so did you guys get this part? Was I clear? Any doubts? Anything? Parentheses is server error. Yes. This is client error. Okay, Shirish. Okay, I'll just assume that everyone got it. So we're gonna move ahead. So what are we making? I talked about a lot of things: server errors, client errors, HTTP calls and stuff. But what are we actually making? We're gonna use Flask that we just learned, and we're gonna use MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database, to make a user management system. So we'll basically have routes which will create, delete, uh, get, and or change some details about the user. So let's talk about MongoDB. MongoDB is a NoSQL database, and it has a proper structure. Okay, so it has a working structure. MongoDB itself has the whole thing has a cluster. So a cluster is basically, in layman terms, don't quote me here, but in layman terms, a cluster is a computer where you keep all of your data. Okay, so when you create a MongoDB account or you create a MongoDB project, you first create a cluster. Inside that, you can create multiple databases. Okay, so let's say, okay, you might ask that, Irish, why do you want multiple databases? Well, let's say I'm making a very, very, very big software, and it has a lot of users, and every user has a lot of different attributes. So let's say I have 4 kinds of users, and every kind of user has like 100 or 200 things. So I have 100 admins, 100 what do we say, 100 database managers, 100 users, 100 clients. So in that case, we make one database which is only for users. Okay, and then we'll have another database which will, let's say, for images. Okay, inside a database we have collections. So collection is basically a list of documents. Again, document is a JSON file. So a document is where you actually keep the data. Okay, a collection is a list of documents. So a collection is a list of datas, of all the different data that you want. And again, A database, you can also say a database is a collection, is a list of all the collections, and a cluster is a list of all the databases. But was it good enough? Did you guys understand what I wanted to say? Okay. Okay, cool, perfect. So let's now go ahead and make a MongoDB account. Go to mongodb.com. I'm actually okay, yeah, cool. Let's open MongoDB and let's go ahead and create an account. In case you already have an account, you can just sign in. But I'm gonna create an account, try free, and we're gonna create a cloud account. Let's so company name is optional. I don't own a company. Server. Okay, Kaushal, just bear with me for 5 minutes. People who don't have a MongoDB, what do we call, account or a server, I'll just make one for them. So I'm learning MongoDB. Your email would be dsc@mi.bc.in. First name, let's name it dsc. Last name NIE. Let's make a password. Agree and get started. Um, let's just wait. My internet is kind of giving me a bad day today. Is it not doing this? Okay, let's just wait. We're gonna skip this. Okay, and we're gonna create a free cluster. Make sure you click on the free cluster. Do not get a paid account, please, because as you can see, it's hourly charge and it's in dollars. Might be an issue. So go ahead and create a free cluster. So over here, you can select anything you want. So AWS, Google Cloud is here. This is basically telling you on which provider your computer will be. So as I said, a cluster is a computer where you keep your data. So this is where it's asking on if you want your computer to be part of AWS, GCP, or Azure. So I'm going to go and use GCP. And you can see all of these different places where it can be. It's better if you use the ones with stars because they're the recommended regions. So I'm going to use Mumbai, and everything else you can keep it as it is. If you want, you can change the cluster name. I'm going to change it to Flask Workshop. Okay, and create. Okay, so everyone should be here by now. Did everyone create the account? So any issues in creating an account and creating the cluster? Okay, I'm going to assume it worked well. So yeah, now what we want is we want to set up a few accounts and a few rules. So first of all, we're going to go into database access and we're going to create a database user. Okay. So okay, a lot of people can have access to your MongoDB account. So as I made a DSC account, a lot of people, almost all the DSC cores have access to this account. But now, not all the DSC cores are supposed to go ahead and change this database, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a database user and I'm going to make sure that whoever has this ID and password and only those people can go ahead and log in. So we're gonna make a DB user and password please don't show. Yeah. So I'm gonna make a normal password. And go ahead and add user. So this made a database user. Okay. Please make sure you do remember the database user, I mean the username and the password. That is very important. You can obviously go ahead and create more users, but it's better if you remember. Then we'll go to network access and we're going to change the IP address. So because we are making an application which we're just going to use for fun and most probably we'll delete this later. So I'm going to click on allow access from anywhere. What this does is this writes an IP, this fills up an IP here, which is an open IP, and hence everyone can access this. So I'm going to confirm. Now we have the access. Let's see. Okay, now let's go to clusters. So as you can see, your cluster is being created. It takes actually a pretty good amount of time to create the cluster. So we can wait till it gets created. Up till then, just quickly tell me, was everyone able to follow the steps and was able to create a database user and a password and stuff? Um, okay. Okay, I'll just move on. So now we have to install MongoDB on your, we have to install PyMongo. So PyMongo is basically a library that lets you talk to your MongoDB. We made a MongoDB cluster, we made a MongoDB database on the cloud, on the internet, but we need a way to talk to it using our Flask application, right? So our Flask application uses Python, and hence we're going to install the Python libraries for it. Let's go ahead and do that. So let's open terminal. Let's do pip install PyMongo. This will again take less time on my laptop because I already have it. So in your case, it might take some more time. Okay, so once you're done installing with installing PyMongo, you have to install something called DNS Python. So I'm going to do that as well. Actually, let me just clear this first. Okay, so it already had that, so that's why it's giving me. So it says requirement already satisfied. It already had DNS Python installed for me. Are you guys done installing DNS Python? Did you guys have any issues doing that? Anyone? Okay, nah, you installed it well, cool. So let's go back to our web thingy and yeah. So now I have my cluster ready. It's no more, we are getting it created. It's ready and it's up. So we need a couple of things. First of all, I'll just go ahead and open a new project here on my VS Code. Let's make a new folder. That's Mongo. Create and open. Okay, so we have it open now. So let's go ahead and make an app.py like we did. Um, and we're gonna first import PyMongo. So actually, we're gonna do. We're not gonna import PyMongo the whole module like we did not import Flask the whole module. We're gonna import just the things that we want. So we're gonna do from PyMongo import Mongo client. And again, we're going to set up our Flask thingy. So we're going to import, sorry, from Flask, import Flask, and from Flask, we'll need something called requests. So I'll talk about this quickly, but let me just add it first. Okay. So can quickly someone tell me that did everyone have it installed? Did anyone face any issues in getting this screen, the connect button and stuff? Okay, I'll assume it was a pool. So we're gonna click on connect, and it'll show up this. So we need to connect our application. That's why I'm gonna click connect on application, and we're gonna select Python here, and we're gonna change this to 3.6 or later. And let's do this. So this gives us the complete document, complete sentences that we need to, not sentences, complete syntax that we need to have our MongoDB connected. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it here. And this will give me an error because I imported only Mongo client. I did not import, I did not import PyMongo. So that is what I'm actually going to do. We're going to import PyMongo, the whole module, because we need a lot of the PyMongo, what do we call, functions and methods. And hence we're going to do that. One more. Yeah, Shirish, one more alternative is installing PyMongo locally, but it's much easier to do it on cloud, and there's a lot less bugs that you're going to face when you do it on cloud. So that's why we went with this way. Cool. So yeah, once you get this string and this thingy, what you have to do is you're going to see it already has DB user in here. That is the user that I created. So let me close this. Let's go to database access. You can see we have DB user. That was the user that I created, and it already has that. But it has a placeholder for password. So that is because it doesn't know my password, and I have to add my password here. I'm actually going to type out my password. So people, please don't log in and do wrong things here. In your case, you'll have to use your own password. And one last thing, over here we'll have DB name. So it expects the database that we're trying to connect to. Now the small problem with that is, up till now, we did not create any database. We just created the MongoDB ka cluster. So we're going to go to the UI again. We're going to go to clusters, and we're going to click on collections. So as I said, collection is the second step. First, we have database, then we have collection, documents, and data itself. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to click on add my own data, and it's going to ask me for a database name. So let's give the database name as Flask. Let it be lowercase Flask. Okay, and we're going to create a collection called users. Okay, so let's just wait for a second. Now we have a database here and we have a collection users, which is empty. So let that be. Now what we want to do is we want to add the database name here. So we created Flask as a database. So I'm going to add that here, and db client.flask. So we first, using the client variable, we first connected to the MongoDB, our MongoDB cloud, what do we call it? Cloud instance. So we connected to our computer that is on GCP as we selected in Mumbai, and we connected to that using this link. To be more specific, we not just connect to the computer itself. We connected to the MongoDB instance or MongoDB cluster that is running inside that computer. And now what I'm doing is I'm using a variable called okay, this might cause errors. Yeah, I didn't think of this. So let me just delete this database. We cannot use that because Flask is, uh, it might clash with the module Flask. So I'm gonna make a new database again, and we're gonna name it Flask Workshop, or Flask Work to be more specific. And I'm gonna quickly go ahead and add Flask Work here. Also, Flask Work here. So now what we have done is we have done client.py. So basically we have, as I said, connected to the computer and the MongoDB instance running. Now using DB, we are connecting to the Flask work DB that we made. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to use print, and I'm going to do db dot list collection names, which is a function. So if I run this code now, if it gives me some errors, that means I did something wrong while connecting to my database. And if it if it prints out a list with users inside it, that means it got connected and it read the right database and gave me the right thing. Let's go ahead and run it. So okay, no module named PyMongo. Okay. Yeah, that issue already mentioned, database name in URI. Sheesh, I didn't get you. Can you come again? Okay, we had an error which says bad auth authentication failed. So if you get this error, that means you have used a wrong username or a wrong password. Okay, because it says authentication failed. So I actually honestly forgot what my database password is. So I'm gonna delete this user. I'm gonna create a new one. So let's go ahead and create a new user called DB user again, and let's make a simpler password this time. Let's name it BSC. Okay. Let's add this user, and I'm going to change the password here. Save it and run it again. And it should get
Hello,
users. Let's see.
Girish, am I audible?
Okay, this is not supposed to happen. Just a second. Um, okay, this is weird. Daily users can application data in database. All users edit. Okay. Why do you
Hello,
need
Girish.
to? Yeah, Yashish. Your voice is really low. Can you speak a little louder?
Okay, okay. What I was saying was, you mentioned the database name in the Mongo URI, right? So why do you
Yeah.
still have to do client.database names when the client is
Um,
already selected for the database?
okay, that is a good question. I actually
Because this
don't know why
database
we have.
name is actually new to MongoDB. If I'm not wrong, this wasn't there before.
Sheesh,
So if
your audio is really low. Can you do something about that?
okay, just a sec.
Yeah. Mm, maybe you can also do client.get database. Oh, okay. So I don't know what happened. It just worked automatically. I think maybe I hadn't saved the app.py file, and that's why it wasn't taking. Yeah. So since I didn't, what do we call it? I didn't save the file. It wasn't taking the new password. But okay, we are connected now, and as you can see, we got users printed. And if I go to my database, go to my UI, and if I go to clusters and collection, you can see we have a database called Flask Work, and we have a collection called users. Okay, so okay, cool. So everything is working. Did anyone up till now have any issues in connecting, or were you guys following along with me? Any problems? Anyone? People are there. 30 people. I guess we should, Um, okay, I'm gonna take that as a no, and we're gonna continue. So up till now, we didn't write a API. I mean, we didn't even make our Flask app. So now that we know that we are connected to our MongoDB and it is working perfectly, we're gonna start working on our app. So I'm gonna do a similar way like we did earlier. We're gonna make a Flask object, and then we're gonna use the main statement to run the application. App.run, and we're gonna keep it debug true, and let's save it. This will do really, won't do anything. So now what I have planned is we're gonna have one route in which we're gonna create, delete, get and edit all the users using the different request methods. And we're going to create one more route using which we're going to get a little list of all the users that are actually present. So let's start. Okay, so app.route hash users and def, let's name it users. Okay, so as you notice, I import something called requests. I did that so that I can, check what kind of request is coming in. So I can do if request dot method is equal post, then we're gonna print. For now, I'm just gonna return a string. Okay, yeah, return a string called post method. Okay, let's save this and run this. Okay, it's gonna cause an error. I forgot. So we're gonna do it from here. So yeah, our server is up and running. So to test this, we're not going to use the browser because the browser expects HTML and actual things there. But we're going to use something called Insomnia. which we told everyone to install in the mail that we sent out. I hope you guys have Insomnia installed. So the way Insomnia works is you can just send requests to your application. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is, you see this what do we call URL 127.0.1 colon 5000. This is what we get from here, right? And then I defined a route called slash users. So I have a route called slash users here. And over here, I can select what kind of request I'm sending. So I'm going to send a post request. This is actually going to give me an error which says method not found. That happened because I was expecting a post method, but me as a user was expecting a post method, but I never told my application that this route can also get a post method, right? So that's what, to define that, we're going to go ahead to the app.route. Right after the route, we're going to have a named argument called methods, which is a list of strings. So we're going to have a get method, we're going to have a post method, we're going to have a delete method, and finally we're going to have a patch method. Okay. So now if I save and I send that request again, it will actually work and it'll give me a so now you can see post method and it works. So I did that intentionally so that I can tell you how to tell the application that what kind of methods are allowed here. So let's move on and let's, okay, no one, does anyone had any issues or errors with MongoDB or connecting with MongoDB or up till this part? Did everyone get this part? Okay, since no one is replying, I'm going to assume everything is working fine because that's how the world works. Now we're going to import an standard library called UUID. Okay, or to be more specific, I'm going to import UUID4 from the module UUID. So UUID is inbuilt Python method, or like, or a library which lets you create unique IDs. Okay, and since we'll be having multiple users, we would like every user to have a unique ID, so that if I want to get just one user, I can send the server that ID, and I can end up getting that single user, right? So I imported this, and let's go ahead and write some more logic here. Okay, thank you, Pranav, for sharing that link. So we're going to have something called UID, which is equal to string of UUID4. So UUID returns us an object of UUID. And when we convert it to string, actually, one sec, let me just go ahead and show what happens. So Python 3, and I'm going to import from UUID, import UUID4. And if I do a x is equal to UUID4 of this, then I print x, you can see it gives me a UUID object with this U string inside it. So this is actually our actual ID that the UUID generates for us, and this is what we need. So when I convert this x into a string, it gives me that. But now it has hyphens in between, which works, but I don't like them. So I'm just gonna quickly do a str of x, and I'm gonna do a replace hyphens with nothing. That gives me a raw string. This is what we're going to do here. So I do a UUID. So this gives me the UUID object. I convert it into a string. So this gives me a string ID. And now I replace the hyphens with nothing. So now I have a proper UID. Okay. What we're going to do now is go ahead and work with it a little more. So in the post method, as I said, using the post request, you can send data with it, right? And when we send data, we need a way to access it. So what we're going to do is we're going to name a variable called data, and in that we're going to use the request method, and we're going to get request dot get data. Okay, so this basically gives us the data. You can also do get JSON. I prefer get JSON because that automatically converts the whole data into a JSON file. So we're going to do a get JSON function here. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a dictionary. Actually, I'm going to make user. Okay, that is the variable that's going to store our whole user, and in that I'm going to put the data, all the data that I get. So if I send something like name Iresh and age 20, I'm going to get name Iresh and age 20 inside user. But the reason I moved it into another, another variable is so that now I can edit it. I'm going to add user underscore id is equal to uid. So in MongoDB, we have something called underscore ID, and underscore ID is what it uses to identify every document separately. So as I said, cluster, database, collection, document. Document is where our actual data is going to be, and that's so we can think of every document as a user. And since every user has to have a unique ID, we assign the value to underscore ID. Underscore ID is an inbuilt key in the MongoDB, what do we call, database structure kind of thing. So now what I'm going to do is I am done with getting the data and computing the data. So I converted, I created a UID for it and I added it to the data. Now we're finally gonna what do we call, create the data, create the what do we call, document. So we do document is equal to db. So db is the variable where we keep our data, and inside db to access a collection, you can do it the way you use what do we call, I'm really sorry. So the way we work with dictionaries, and that is why, to make things simple in my head, I think of MongoDB in something like this. So a database is a variable which keeps a dictionary where every key is a collection, and then every collection has a list, and that list is another dictionary. So if I put it out in programmatic ways, if I try to write it out, so database is going to be a huge dictionary where every key, let's say user, actually let me name this database as Flaskwork, that is our database, where every key is a collection. A key is a list of more dictionaries where every dictionary is the actual document. So this is what our database will look like if I keep on multiplying this. So after some point, this is what our database will look like. We have the database Flaskwork, which is a dictionary where every key is a collection. A collection is a list of documents, and document indeed is another dictionary. Okay, is everyone clear with the MongoDB data structure? This is the way that I like to understand this, and this is the way I understand. Okay, cool. Shirish just said yes. Okay, Deepika, thank you for responding again, guys. This really pumps up. But okay, now let's go ahead and actually put the data in. So I'm going to use db.user, and we're going to do create. One sec, not create. We're going to do insert. So since I said every collection is a list, we insert something into a list. In Python, we call it append, but then insert makes sense. So it's a whole list. We take one data, we take one thing and we insert it inside. So we do insert, and then we do insert one to make sure to tell it that I'm only inserting one thing. And insert one, I'm going to pass the user object that I have. So I'm just going to set user. Okay. Now this function will return us something. So if we were able to create a user, it will return us the whole user object. Else, it will return us none. So we're going to do a check. So if doc is equal none, then we return something, and else we return something else. Okay. So this part, this return statement at line number 20 is going to work when our data was not been able to return. So when we were not able to add or insert the document into our current collection. Okay. So let's just, so as I said, I like working with JSONs, and hence I'm going to import something else from class. I'm going to import JSON. Okay. So JSON.jsonify. Okay, JSON.jsonify. What does this line do? Let's think about it. So in one of the slides, I mentioned that a JSON is basically a fancy dictionary. It's a dictionary with some added perks. So what I'm doing here is I'm passing in a dictionary. Let's say PRR error, something went wrong. Okay, so this is a Python dictionary. We're all familiar with this dictionary, and I'm converting it to a JSON. So I'm basically converting this dictionary into JSON, giving it that little extra perks that the JSON has. And remember status codes that you were talking about? So I was saying that when something goes wrong on the server side, we send a 500, right? And if everything goes correctly, we send a 200. So to send that in Flask, what we do is we first, after return, the first thing we send is the actual data that we want to send. So basically JSON.jsonify error. And then I'm going to send comma the error code. So since it was a server side error, since my server was not able to create the user, we're going to send 500. But if it was able to create the user, I'm going to do a JSON.jsonify, and I'm going to send status colon. Let's just send I am happy it worked, because trust me, you'll be very happy when your things work. So, and now since everything worked fine, I'm going to send a 200. Okay, let me just exit this. This, and okay, so my server has been restarted. Let's go ahead and make a post request. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send a JSON here. As I said, we're going to get a JSON in the backend. So I have to send a JSON here using the Insomnia app. So what I'm going to send is name. That's going to be Irish, my name, because I love myself. And age, it's going to be 10. Actually, no, I'm 20. And let's send, what else should we send? Let's just send a name and age. Okay, I'll send it, and it got me a bad request explaining property name, naming closing double quotes. There is an array. Oh, okay, sorry. I have to send it as a string. So string 20. Yeah, that's still error. What is the error? Age colon. Okay, let me just fix this. Let's try it again. Okay, this worked, and age colon 20. It's similar. Okay, there was a trailing comma. Oh, cool. So I'm going to send this, and we should have a status. I'm happy it worked. So to check that it worked, we're going to go into our database again, and we're going to reload this page. So now I should have my name here. Let's wait. Okay, user. Let's go there, and we can see Irish and 20, and we can see an ID. Now something interesting happened here. If you notice, there was users already, but it created user. In an ideal case scenario, if I put something wrong here, it should have errored out. But this is where MongoDB is both a boon and a bane. So if you do a typo and you send data into a wrong collection, it'll do that. But in case you're starting fresh and you don't actually have a collection, it'll create a collection for you. So you have to be very, concise about what you're doing and about not making typos. So yeah, we created a user, and this is the code for it in case you're looking for it again. Did anyone have any issues up till now, or am I too fast? Any errors? Anything you want to say? Okay, no one replied. Okay, I'm gonna continue. So they're able to create users. We tested that. Now let's go ahead and get some users. So as I mentioned earlier, to get user, you need to send a get request. So we're gonna put a lf here, request dot method is equal get. Also remember, these are case sensitive. Get, post, put, all these methods are supposed to be capital, so all letters are capital. And yeah, let's continue. So cool. If we have a get request, what I'm going to do is, as I said, we're going to have Okay, let me just make this a little smaller if I can. Good. Yeah. So we're going to send something known as query parameter. We're going to send the ID as a query. So to access that, what we do is we're going to write query, which is going to be request.args, which is not a function. So we don't end it with close brackets. And for now, I'm just going to return that same query, that same ID that we sent. So query ID. Let's save it. My server restarted. Perfect. Let's open Insomnia and let's make a GET request to this and delete this. Let's write query and ID. I'm going to send an ID, say anything, and send it. So it will return me back the ID itself. Okay. Is anyone following along? And anyone having any issues or stuff? Okay, never mind. So cool. We can access the queries that we send. Okay. So now we need to get the data. So I need doc is equal to DB. We're going to reference the database. We're going to access the users collection and we're going to find one. Since we're only looking for that one user which has that ID. So that one takes this find one method takes a required argument, which is the filter, which is basically a JSON which requires the field that you are checking with. So if I send name and I send some name, it will look for documents where the name key is equal to that. So I'm sending, since I'm sending the ID, I'm going to check for underscore ID key. And we're going to pass query ID here. Again, since this can go wrong, we're going to do doc if doc is equal none, then return json.jsonify. Stay error, something bad happened. I'm sad. Well, because if something goes wrong, you'll be sad. And we're going to send a 500 to this because it's a server-side error. And let's do an else statement where we're going to return the actual data that we have. So json.jsonify. And actually, I don't need to do that. So I can just json.jsonify and I can send the doc itself. And we can send 200 here if I'm not wrong. So first, let's test this statement. I'm going to send a very random ID and we're going to get an error. So let's do that again. Let's send this. And we have an error, something bad happened, 500. Cool. Now I'll go ahead, go to my document, RDB, edit this, get the actual ID, and put it here. Send. So as you can see, I got the ID, the age, and name. Pretty simple, right? Like it's pretty simple. You just have to make calls. This is the code. And if you're worrying about the code, I have all the code in a GitHub repository. We'll be sending the link to you guys. And the best part is I have also written some extra code. So this API is app 3. I have an app 2 there, which is a web application with some complex templating and stuff. So you can check that out as well. Now let's go ahead and make the delete call. So lf request dot method is equal delete. Then again, since for delete, I'll need the ID which I'm deleting. So I'm going to do request dot args and doc is equal to db user dot delete one where the ID is the query ID. And I'm going to send okay. So now if doc is equal, okay, one thing, yeah. Okay, now what we want, this might cause errors because if the document or if the user with that ID does not exist, this might go wrong. So what we're going to do is we're going to first find it. If the user exists, we're going to delete it. And we're going to do the same here as well. So I'm going to first change this. Actually, no. Sorry, not change that. So we're gonna first find the document. So let's delete this part. Let's make this from delete one to find one. Perfect. So if doc is equal none, I'm gonna return json.jsonify error user not found, and we're actually gonna use a perfect status code for that. So let me just find the status code. Go in here, resource, and so actually wait, I can just use 404 because user not found. So yeah. Else, if the user is found, we make another call where we do doc is equal to db user dot delete one. Then I'm going to send the ID is equal to query ID. So this will delete, and then we're going to return json.sonify status. Let's just return 2 this time and make things simple, and a status code of 200. Perfect. Done. So we can create, get, and delete. So let's go ahead and first create a few more documents, and then we'll start deleting stuff. Post, delete, go to JSON, and let's create. It is going to be one which is 1 month old. So yeah, and oh shit. Okay. Let's send the post request, and we are created. Let's change the name to place, and he is 6 years old because I can. So you that. Now, if I go to my MongoDB Atlas and I reload the page, I should have a few more documents. Okay, so we have 3 documents. Now I'm going to use the delete call. Let's go to delete, clear this out. In the query, I'm going to send a very random ID, let's say 6. Okay, I send, it's going to give us a 404 user not found. Now let's quickly test it for the correct ID as well. Edit. So I'm deleting the, you can see I'm deleting Blaze. So once this is done, we should not have Blaze there. So it is true if I reload the page, reload the database file page. Let's just wait. And anytime now. Okay, my internet is kind of slow. Let's just wait. If we had no errors here, so I'm pretty sure it got deleted, but okay, yeah. So Blaze is deleted. You can see that. Now we're going to quickly write one more thing. That is the patch part. So elif request dot method is equal patch. Now in this case, we need both the ID and the data that we have to change. So for that, for ID, again, we're going to use the arguments. And for the data, we're going to use the get JSON like we did. Perfect. And now, first things first, we have to first check if the user exists or not. So doc is equal to db user dot find one query ID. If doc is equal none, we return an error. I'm just going to copy the error from here. else we are going to do a doc is equal to db user dot delete one, and we're going to set the I. Okay, not delete, I'm sorry, we have to modify it. So we're gonna modify, I guess, one sec. Okay, update, yeah, we're gonna update one. Again, we have to send the ID, so I'm gonna first send underscore ID. Now the update method takes two inputs. First, it takes the ID, so we're gonna send query ID to it, and then it needs a object, a specific dictionary which has $set as a key, and then that has a dictionary of things that you have to change. Okay, let's try this. So we're gonna change. Where is it? Data. So we're gonna send data in here, and once this is done, we return JSON.JSONify status. I deleted someone. Okay, no. Now let's just send true, simpler, and we'll send 200 HTTP code. So we're done with that. I'm gonna exit. I accidentally closed the server, so let me fix that. Okay, cool. So the server has restarted. Now let's go ahead and send. Let me just copy DSC ID. We'll send this ID here, and in JSON we're going to send some data. We're going to add a key called. First, we're going to change the name to developer student clubs, and we're going to add something saying events done, and let's just add 5 maybe. I don't know. And let's send this data. So it sent the status true. If I go here, if I reload the page, hopefully this reloads faster this time. Oh shit, I sent a delete request. Okay, that is my bad. I'm really sorry. I'll change this. I'll send a patch request, and I'm going to change the ID because else will give me an error. And let's send true. If I reload now, I should have updated my name to Developer Student Club. So let's just wait a second. Yeah, as you can see, Developer Student Club, events done 5, age 20. So that also worked. Now, anyone up till now has any issues, anything? Is everyone following or what? Okay, I'm gonna assume we had no issues in anything. So let's just go back and focus on getting the list now. So what you can do is we're gonna have a new route, app.route slash list def users. They're only gonna have a get request. So Flask by default takes every request as get. So I'm gonna directly do my computation here. You're gonna have docs is equal to list of db user dot find. Find. So if I pass nothing inside find, it will give me all the documents that exist. But if I send something like if I send something inside it, it'll filter by that. So what I mean by filtering is, I'll show you. Let's just restart. First, I'm going to send a lot of post requests. I'm going to delete this. I have a JSON. I'm going to create a lot of documents with the name as Developer Student Club. Okay, and I keep sending it. And now I'm going to change the name to Developer Clubs. Create a few users that like that. Let me just go and reload it. Make sure we have a few users here. My internet. Okay, stuck. Okay, you know what? I trust my code, so I'm gonna send a get request to /list, and I should get the list of everything. I'll delete this, and okay, cool. Let's just send this, and okay, 500 internal error. Oh, okay, yeah, that was so dumb. I did not return anything, so I have to return JSON.disonify, and I'm gonna send a key called data that will have all the docs. I'm gonna send 200 here. This should work. Also, as you can see, all the documents are created. The server is restarted. Let's go ahead and send the request again. Now we have all of them. Okay. Now, what I was saying is, if it is empty, we get all of them. Now I'm going to quickly change it, and I'm going to do this. I'll send a JSON with this inside it. So what this will do is it will only give us all the users whose names are developer student clubs. So if I send the same request again, we'll get less documents, and all of them will have the name as developer student clubs. So the documents in which I removed student, which were developer clubs, are not here. As you can see, we have 2 documents for developer clubs, but they don't show up here because I filtered them. Okay. So now we have a list. I'm gonna teach one more thing. It's just adding, what do we call? We have already written the method to get a single user, but there's a secondary way of doing it which I want to teach which is very important. So I'm gonna do that quickly. At app.route /user /ID. So if you see, I wrote ID inside these HTML tag wala things, right? What that does is it automatically from the URL gives me the key, gives me this value. Okay, so I'm going to change this to UID. I'm going to make this UID. So it will automatically give me the UID from here. I'll tell you what that means. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do doc is equal to baby user dot find one, and here the ID is going to be UID, and let me just directly return because I know the document will exist. So we'll quickly wrap it off. Yeah. JSON is verify. Just send the doc itself, right? That should work. Yeah, send the doc, and where is it? And send the status code as 200. Let's save this. And now instead of sending a query parameter, what I can do is I'll make it a get request. I'll make it user slash, and I'll put the user ID here. So if I copy the user ID from here and I paste it here, you can see we still got that data. So every time it's not mandatory to get the data from the query itself. You can send something like this as well. There are some times when you'll want to do that. There are cases for where query is better. There are cases where this is better. So accordingly, you can change them. So that is all about writing APIs with Flask and getting things done. So does anyone have any issues or any doubts or anything? Anyone? Anything? Okay, so that was it about Flask and MongoDB and writing an API. We wrote something which is almost 100 lines long, so it's an achievement. Like writing a Python script which is 100 lines long is pretty good. You now know how to write web servers. So before signing off, I'd like to tell you about one last thing, which is the Developer Student Club ka Hacktober Fest thingy. So what we're planning is that you can write Flask applications up till 20th of October, because on 21st we'll have an amazing event on Docker and GCP where we'll be having Milan over. Milan has been working as a technical solution head at GCP itself. So he's working in Google. He'll come here and he'll teach you how to Dockerize your Flask app and put it up on GCP and make it available for everyone, right? So in this repository, you can go ahead, read the contributing.md file to know how to contribute. You can put up your Flask projects like this. So your name and bracket Flask. We're planning to certify the top 3 people and give them leaderboard points, like a bunch of leaderboard points. And the one which is the best Flask project in our in like what we think. So out of all, which is the best, which is the most complex, and which takes the most time, and which has the most number of features, we'll give that to Millen itself, and Millen will be hosting that. So you'll have your application hosted on a GCP account. So yeah, that is it about today's event. If anyone has any issues, want to know more about anything, you can talk. We don't have a lot of people, so if you want, you can unmute yourself and talk to me directly. And yeah, I'm going to stop presenting.